She was stabbed on her couch after a wedding, and he was seen in the area that morning on 35 different security cameras. His jacket had her blood on it, but he says it's because he leaned down to check her pulse. But then he just had to run away without helping because he was a black man with a criminal past and she was a dead white lady. This is the story of Samantha Woll, the Detroit community leader who accidentally left her door open on the wrong night. Hi friends, I'm Katie, and this is Katie Does Crime. Thank you for joining me for the first time if you're new here, and hello to the usual rapscallions and reprobates. Please consider subscribing or joining me on Patreon if you'd like to hear more true crime stories. On Saturday, October 21st, 2023, police responded to a 911 call from a man walking his dog in Detroit, Michigan. It was 6:30 in the morning, and he said a woman was lying on the ground outside her house in the Lafayette Park neighborhood. She was blue and cold and not responding. She had been stabbed to death, and a trail of blood led to her house. She was declared dead at the scene. At first, the authorities weren't discussing a motive, but a potential one was pretty clear. It turns out the woman was Samantha Woll, the board president of a synagogue. And this was October 2023, when tensions were high over the violence in Israel and Gaza. Anti-Semitic posts online increased by 1,200% during that time. Samantha was 40 years old and had been leading the Isaac Agri downtown synagogue since 2022, after being a political aide and a campaign staffer. The Michigan Attorney General said, "Sam was as kind a person as I've ever known. She was driven by her sincere love of her community, state, and country. Sam truly used her faith and activism to create a better place for everyone." I'm going to play a clip of Sam talking in a Michigan Historic Preservation Network video from April 2023, just several months before she died, because I just love her Northern Midwest accent.
So I first moved to the city about 10 years ago. I grew up in suburban Detroit. And when I moved to the city, I was looking for a synagogue, for a place to go to services on Shabbat, Friday night, Saturday morning, to celebrate holidays and to meet people. I was very fortunate to find the downtown synagogue in Detroit. As Marty had mentioned, that currently at the time in the early 2010s, that the other synagogues in the region were outside of the city. So it would be a 25 or 30-minute drive were I to want to find a synagogue closer. So to be able to have one in the city was really meaningful.
One of the first mentions I could find of Sam in a newspaper was a quote from her time at the University of Michigan. She said, "We don't need hate on our campus. Try to understand your counterparts. Be civil. Go for understanding." A living example of this, Sam helped found the Muslim-Jewish Forum of Detroit, a group that works to build authentic relationships across different cultures. People who worked with Sam said she brought light in the face of darkness, had a deep dedication to service, and was passionate about justice. She was also an artist and supported all of the arts in Detroit. Her family called her unfailing in her commitment to living in the moment. More than 1,000 people came to her funeral. The night before her murder, Sam had attended a wedding where a friend said she was having fun and seemed totally normal. Her friend is thankful that her last memories of Sam will be really happy and positive. Sam left the wedding at around 12:15 a.m., went home, and sent her final text message, a heart emoji to a friend, just because. Police believe she was attacked in her own home and then stumbled outside to the yard where she took her last breath. They found her door open and unlocked with a significant amount of blood inside. She had multiple sharp force wounds from a straight-edge cutting instrument. Unfortunately, the security cameras in the area didn't point at the residences, so no one was caught entering her home. Later that year, in December 2023, a person of interest was picked up and charged with Sam's murder, breaking and entering, and lying to an officer. They said he made false and misleading statements in regard to the investigation of the case when he said he wasn't attempting to steal things from cars in Sam's area on the day of the murder. His name was Michael Manuel Jackson Bolanos, and he was a 28-year-old living in Detroit. The police had actually been looking at him for a few weeks after a series of thefts in Sam's area, but they had to release him until they could get enough evidence for an arrest and her death. Nothing suggested that Jackson Bolanos meant to commit a hate crime. A big Israeli flag in her apartment wasn't touched, nor even that he knew who Sam was. And another unnamed suspect who did know Sam had actually been taken into custody and then released in early November. So this new suspect's lawyer said the police were just pressured to find someone, anyone, to charge. The Detroit police chief said that it's not unusual to have a number of suspects in a complex homicide investigation, and they were just being thorough. He called Jackson Bolanos' answers during police questioning concerning. Jackson Bolanos had been in prison from 2014 to 2018 on a stolen motor vehicle charge, and then was on probation from 2019 to 2021 for a similar offense. He has a tattoo that says, "God forgives, I don't." But his lawyer said he wasn't the type to commit murder. His lawyer said he didn't have a violent criminal history, even though he racked up 40 violations in prison, some for assaulting people. His lawyer also said he'd been working full-time before his arrest for Sam's death, which I guess is supposed to make us think he didn't need to be breaking into cars that night. He pleaded not guilty to her murder. But here's the thing. The Wayne County assistant prosecutor revealed that Sam's blood was found on his jacket. Her security system sensed motion at 4:20 a.m. in her living room, where authorities think she had fallen asleep after the wedding. They think Jackson Bolanos saw a crime of opportunity with the unlocked door, broke into her home, and stabbed her 8 times. Videos and cell phone records put him in the area at the right time. He had also searched for Greyhound bus tickets in the days leading up to his arrest, like he was thinking of escaping town. And of course, he couldn't explain how her blood got on his jacket. He was held without bond. Jackson Bolanos was in court in January 2024 for a preliminary hearing. Law enforcement testified that according to her security system, Sam's door was left open at 1:01 a.m. on the night she was murdered. The security system sent her a text saying the door was open, but it seems like she either didn't see it or didn't register its importance. Authorities were able to place Jackson Bolanos at his girlfriend's home in Midtown later that morning, and that's where they found his black North Face jacket with Sam's blood on it. He was seen wearing that same jacket on security footage near Sam's apartment on the night of the murder. There's nothing that absolutely showed Jackson Bolanos in her home, though, including no camera footage. But his cell phone certainly showed him in the area, and there were signs of a struggle inside the apartment. The bruises on Sam's face, knees, and elbows showed what she'd been through. And there was blood on the couch where authorities think Sam had been sleeping, blood all over the living room and the entrance to the house. And yet there wasn't enough blood on Jackson Bolanos' jacket that it could be seen by the naked eye. Also, Sam's security system noted that movement in her living room at 4:20 a.m., but Jackson Bolanos was seen on surveillance footage a quarter mile away at 4:24. That would hardly be enough time for him to stab her and run away. Sam's cell phone was last locked at 1:35 a.m., and a neighbor allegedly heard a scream at 1:38 a.m., so maybe the murder happened then, much earlier, and Jackson Bolanos wasn't in the area at the earlier time. But if the defense was saying that he just stumbled upon Sam's body after someone else killed her, then he had lied to the cops once again when he said he didn't see anything out of the ordinary that night. For the record, the Detroit Free Press contacted the neighbor who heard the scream while out walking a dog, and they said they may have been mistaken about the 1:38 timeline. Their Apple Watch says they were asleep by 1:20 a.m., and they may have just heard yelling from a local bar. Either way, the judge said there was enough evidence against Jackson Bolanos to go to trial with a first-degree murder charge, saying that whoever took the time to stab Sam 8 times had ample opportunity to reflect on their actions. That would make this an intentional, premeditated murder. Trial began on June 11, 2024. The Wayne County Assistant Prosecuting Attorney said Michael Jackson Bolanos was in the neighborhood stealing, saw Sam's door open, and went to steal from her too. He said there was not only blood on Jackson Bolanos' jacket, but on his backpack too. The prosecution pointed to the surveillance video that showed Jackson Bolanos in the area around the time when Sam's security system registered movement in her home. The defense, meanwhile, called Sam's murder not just personal, but a crime of passion, not something done by a random passerby. They also said it couldn't have been executed in the short timeline the prosecution was suggesting. They said there was another, more likely culprit. Sam's ex-boyfriend had actually admitted to being the murderer while having a panic attack. But the prosecution turned it back around, saying that the day after this ex-boyfriend was released from police custody, Jackson Bolanos started searching for how to get a same-day passport. insinuating that he got scared that maybe they would come for him now that they were looking again, and he wanted to get out of town. He had also searched for what black lights can find, which is of course how the authorities would be searching for blood. And while he was in jail for breaking into cars, before he was ever charged with this crime, his girlfriend of 1 month assured him that she had washed his jacket days after the murder. That's pretty suspicious, right? Now, Sam's ex-boyfriend, the one whom the defense was trying to pin the murder on, testified that he was having a full-blown panic attack when he called 911 and said he may be a danger to others. When the cops arrived, he said, "I'm having a panic attack. I'm convinced that I may have murdered my girlfriend and I don't remember it. I have the motive and the opportunity. I may be trying to outsmart people." He later recanted his admission and said he doesn't remember any of it. He'd been having delusions from smoking weed and then doubling up on his new depression medication. The defense was calling this a confession, but I'm not so sure that's my impression. It sounds more like a confused person to me. The defense also said he made himself look guilty because he'd already hired a lawyer when the cops later arrested him. But I don't know. I think I'd also hire a lawyer if I called the police while hallucinating and said I had motive and opportunity for anyone's murder. Jackson Bolanos had been caught with what he called a seatbelt cutter in his pocket after Sam died, but the prosecution pushed him on that and he admitted that it was a knife. But a knife he supposedly kept in his car for cutting seatbelts, like that's apparently something he needs to do a lot. The defense said, though, that Sam's ex-boyfriend also had a knife, but it was never tested. And it wasn't a great look that he was given immunity in exchange for testifying for the defense. His cell phone showed that it was at his home at the time of the murder, but of course he could have left it there on purpose as an alibi. When Jackson Bolanos eventually took the stand in his own defense, he changed his story to say that, okay, yes, he did see Sam that night, and he did touch her. He found her in her front yard and just wanted to see if she was okay, and when she wasn't, he panicked and ran. He said he absolutely didn't kill her. He said, "I'm a black guy in the middle of the night breaking into cars, and I found myself standing in front of a dead white woman. It doesn't look good at all." It's a good argument, right? But in a phone call with his lawyer from jail, he had denied ever seeing Sam at all, let alone touching her. He said the same thing when the police interviewed him. So which is the lie?
You were asked a number of times whether you saw anyone in and around her condo that night by the police, right?
Right, and I stated that I saw a homeless person on the street walking across the street.
I'm going to play a portion of People's Exhibit 107, which is from November 30th. This was your answer. We're going to play it 2 hours, 19 minutes, and 48 seconds.
Didn't see nobody else on that side that you were at besides
I didn't see nobody else. I didn't see no person laying down. I didn't hear nothing. I didn't see nothing. All I did was check a few car handles, and that's it. Take pictures of cars, and that's it. Like, I didn't see nothing out the norm or nothing. Like, bro, homicide is not even my thing on myself. I could tell you everything about weed and cars and other shit, but I don't know nothing about no fucking homicide, bro. I don't know nothing about her or him that you keep saying. I don't know nothing, bro. I'm not really lying to you. Like, I could physically take you.
Now, even though you just said I'm not lying to you, your testimony here in court is that that was a lie, right?
That wasn't a lie. I don't know nothing about homicides. I didn't know nothing of what happened to that woman.
Well, you testified that you saw a woman outside and that you touched her body, right?
That's true.
So when the police asked you, did you see anyone out there, and you said, I didn't see anyone, that was a lie, right?
That was a lie for the purpose he stated that I went into her house. So that made me tell him, no, I did not go in nobody's house. I did not kill Mrs. Woll. I did not do none of that.
I'm not asking what your motivation was to lie. Was that a lie?
Yes.
On cross-examination, the prosecution asked if he would be surprised to find out that they counted him lying 40 times during just one day of being interviewed by the cops. He said, "I'm not sure if it's surprising. I mean, you try being accused of going and killing somebody. I'm here today, as sworn and affirmed, to tell the truth. I may have lied in the past, but today I'm telling the truth." His defense echoed that in their closing, arguing, "We're not saying he's an angel, but he's not a murderer." Jackson Bolanos' attorney said that Sam's purse, laptop, keys, and cash were left in her home according to crime scene photos. and that if Jackson Bolanos had gone inside to steal from her, he would have taken those. He said the blood got on the jacket when Jackson Bolanos was checking for Sam's pulse. But what about the blood on the backpack? The defense said the police didn't do a good job of investigating. They just decided on Jackson Bolanos and built their narrative to fit, even though one of Sam's ex-boyfriends still had a key to her apartment. The prosecution said the ex who supposedly confessed to the murder couldn't provide any details about what happened. He was saying he killed her, but he couldn't recall anything about the crime scene. He'd clearly just talked himself into believing he'd done something. The police pored over all of his phone records, vehicle records, Uber and Lyft records, and couldn't find him being anywhere near Sam during that time. When she broke up with him, he'd texted her, "I understand," so that hardly sounds like someone with a vendetta. Jackson Bolanos, on the other hand, had referred to his own defense as a theory and asked his lawyer, if this was a poker hand, who's looking good? Like, sir, perhaps you should just tell the truth and stop trying to play games. The prosecutor closed his argument by saying he wants to say that he was in the wrong place at the wrong time. The only person who was in the wrong place at the wrong time on October 21st, 2023 was Samantha Woll, and she was in her house. This man was prowling in the night. He's the one who killed her. Make him pay for it. Which is a pretty good closing argument, right? I love the poetry there. After 2 days of deliberations, the jury told the judge it was deadlocked, and she sent them home for the weekend with instructions on what would happen in the case of a hung jury. The jury must reach a unanimous decision or a mistrial will be declared. On the third day of deliberations, the jury was deadlocked again. One of the jurors was dismissed due to a vacation they already had scheduled, leaving a jury of 9 men and 3 women with the new male alternate. They had to restart deliberations now that it was a quote-unquote new jury, but the defense was hopeful that a fresh voice could bring a new perspective. With them still deadlocked after the 4th day, the judge asked if more deliberations could move the needle in one direction or another. Some jurors shook their heads yes, others shook no. The judge said she'd give them 1 more day, and then she'd accept a deadlock. Now, unlike in the Karen Reed trial that I recently covered, the jury sent a note to the judge that they were unanimous on 2 of the charges, but unable to come to an agreement on the others. So on July 18, 2024, Michael Jackson Bolanos was found guilty of lying to the police and not guilty of first-degree premeditated murder. A mistrial was declared on the charges of first-degree felony murder and first-degree home invasion. Those were the charges the jury couldn't agree on. Prosecutors will now have to decide if they want to retry those charges. If you want my opinion, I think Jackson Bolanos probably did murder Sam. He was the only person seen on security footage in the area. His cell phone placed him there, and he had her blood on his jacket and backpack. He said he was considered a habitual offender that night when he was breaking into cars, so another arrest would have meant at least another 25 years in prison. That he was just scared into running away and then lying to the police. But I have to say, I'm honestly a little tired of the "I'm not saying I'm an angel, but I'm not a killer" defense. Every person with a criminal background has to say it, and it just sounds so hollow. Jackson Bolanos looked great up there on the stand in his crisp suit, saying he couldn't stop himself from reaching down to try to help a person in need even though it was so risky, but I don't buy him as a do-gooder. We can't know the context of all of them, but the violations in prison for assaulting people tell me you're not a violent person. The neighbor who found Sam's body said the blood on her was still wet at 6:30 a.m., but Jackson Bolanos testified that her blood was dry and crusty, insinuating that she died many hours before he ever arrived at her house. But I don't know, I'm more inclined to believe the person who didn't lie 40 times in one day to the cops. So yes, I think Jackson Bolanos could have killed Sam, but like the jury, I also don't believe that this was a premeditated murder. I don't think he saw her through the window and wanted her dead or anything. I think he just saw her open door and went inside, and based on the bruises all over her body, I think she probably put up a fight that he didn't expect. I think he probably just killed her to get her to stop fighting. Now, I'm not a lawyer, but as I understand it, in Michigan, felony murder is murder committed during another crime. So I can see how it was a problem for the jury to say definitively that Jackson Bolanos killed Sam while breaking into her home if there's no absolute proof he was in her home. I know it might sound like I'm contradicting myself here because I do believe he killed her in her home, but I just think a second-degree murder charge would have been more of a sure thing. That would imply that he started the act and couldn't stop himself, but that it wasn't some planned attack. And with this charge, it wouldn't matter if he was committing another crime when the murder took place. I'm interested to see if the prosecution will try this one again with a different charge. Either way, I can't help but think what a loss this is to the Detroit community. One of Sam's friends said, Sam had a uniquely special personal relationship with countless people across lines of faith and race and politics and all of the things that usually divide us. So many people think of her as someone with whom they had a particularly close or important relationship, and each of them is right. May she rest in peace. And as always, please let me know what you think about this case in the comments. Thank you for tuning in today. I'm just a true crime fan like you are, and I really appreciate you taking a chance on me. Please like and subscribe to my channel if you like spending this time together. I would be so appreciative. Until next time, I'm Katie, and this has been Katie Does Crime.